Leo Hohmann's new book, Stealth Invasion, Muslim Conquest Through Immigration and Resettlement Jihad. Now, here's why I have an interest in this. Because I live in the part of the country that is called Little Mogadishu. Minnesota, and particularly the Twin Cities, has well over 100,000 Somalis, the largest population in America, and we have our challenges. Now, certainly not all are ill-intentioned, but too many women here in my area are harassed. Dogs are beaten and killed because they're considered unclean. And related issues, still Minnesota's liberalism welcomes more and more from unsaved lands, and few Americans in this part of the country feel safe. Eric Barger joins me as my co-host for this hour, and Leo Hohmann, welcome to the program for the first time.
Thanks for having me on today, Jan. Happy to be here.
Did it surprise you, Leo, when a leftist judge blocked Donald Trump's efforts to keep America safe? Now, this is several weeks ago, and then that was backed up by the Ninth Circuit Court.
No, Jan, not really. We've seen the left mobilizing to an extent that we have never seen before. They are unified, it seems, at many different levels of our society right now, whether it be the media, the educational system, the court system. It's all being politicized. Rather than doing their job in the education system, for instance, I'm writing a story today about a school district in Georgia that's firing teachers if they speak out on social media on immigration, speak their minds in a way that would line up with the policies, approving of the policies of President Trump. And so they're being fired, threatened, and fired. And so it would not surprise me in the least that we would have federal judges coming out and instead of interpreting the Constitution and doing their job and staying within the bounds of the authority of the judicial branch, we see them becoming politicized. And everything under the Obama administration was politicized,
yes,
as you know.
But Barack Obama had the same list of terror nations.
Exactly, and he had even blocked refugees from Iraq for a period of 6 months. When we found that 2 terrorists had slipped into the refugee ranks and ended up being resettled in Bowling Green, Kentucky, he paused refugee resettlement from Iraq for 6 months. You never heard a peep out of the media or the court. Right. President Jimmy Carter did the same thing during the Iran hostage crisis, and that travel ban lasted, I believe, more than a year. So, it is a double standard. Different standard for President Trump than for all the other presidents.
Okay, Leo, you say we are just a few years behind Europe, and we have the same Christian and Jewish leaders falling all over these refugees when they have no idea what Islam teaches. I think that's an important statement you made.
Yes, Jan, as you know, the Christian church in Europe post-World War II became very lukewarm, I guess to say the least, to the point where Europe basically became a post-Christian society. And that just opened the door for Islam, and the migration policies that the government of Europe implemented were conducive for Islam to exploit those lax immigration laws and to rush in to fill the gaps, not only in the economy, because part of the thing that the leftists and globalists are always preaching in a post-Christian society is what? Abortion, family planning, have smaller families, have homosexual relationships are fine. Those are now resulting in sterile same-sex marriages. In Europe, the birth rate for women is now down to like 1.4 children per woman in many countries, well below replacement value. So in an environment like that does not desire to sustain itself or defend its culture, it's perfect for Islam to rush in and fill that vacuum. And that is what I see happening in America now. Fewer people, according to Pew Research and other major polls, believe in God in America than ever before. Still much stronger than Europe, our faith, culture, but it is slipping, and it is slipping fast. That's the stage.
But again, you make the statement that we have the same Christian and Jewish leaders falling all over these refugees when they have no idea what Islam teaches. And I felt that was a very profound statement.
Yeah, part of that backsliding I was talking about is a lack of truth coming from the pulpit.
Yes.
Truth about the important issues of our time. As you know, we've had a awakening of the global Islamic movement over since 9/11, and even before that. Some people believe it started with the Iranian Revolution in 1979, and it's just been picking up steam ever since then. But yet you have the Christian church in these Western democracies of Europe and America not teaching their flock about what is Islam. What does it believe? Who do they believe that Jesus is? Did he die on a cross? Is he the Son of God? None of these are believed in the Islamic faith. And yet Christians, if you ask them these basic things about Islam, they would not know.
Yep. I want to list the organizations that you list that are bringing in these refugees, because this goes back to Christian leaders again. These organizations that you list get a lot of taxpayer dollars to bring in these migrants, these immigrants. And folks, you are listening to Understanding the Times Radio, and I'm Jan Markell. I'm talking to Leo Hohmann, and his new book is Stealth Invasion, Muslim Conquest Through Immigration and Resettlement Jihad. That's right, Muslim conquest through immigration and resettlement jihad. And here are the organizations being used to do this. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, the Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services, Episcopal Migration Ministries, World Relief Corporation, which is an arm of National Association of Evangelicals, Church World Services, part of the World Council of Churches, the U.S. Committee for Refugees and Immigrants, and then there are some others, perhaps less known, International Rescue Committee, and a few other. There are about 10 here, 8 to 10. And these folks get huge dollars. Is that correct?
Yes, and don't forget the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society,
Yes.
which is another one. I believe 6 of the 9 are affiliated with religious denominations. And so these organizations, as you said, present themselves as strictly humanitarian in nature, charitable, humanitarian, non-profit, do-gooding operations. What's not to like about that? Well, when they come into your community and start explaining why accepting refugees is going to be such a good thing and good for your community, and when they're quoted in the local newspapers, it's never pointed out that these are the exact same organizations that are profiting from the resettlement of refugees. They get paid over $2,000 for every refugee that they bring and resettle into the United States. And not only that, they get to keep about half of that, by the way.
Okay, I did not know that.
Not only that, and they're paid this money by the U.S. federal government. They're also paid by the government to collect travel loans from the refugees. Every refugee has to fly here and needs a plane ticket to get here from the third world. The refugee gets a loan to pay for that airfare, and then it's up to the resettlement agency, these 9 organizations, to collect back from the refugee the cost of that airfare, and they get to keep a percentage of that in the way of a collection fee. Thirdly, they not only get paid in those 2 ways, they also get paid a third way. They offer services then to the refugees once they arrive in the United States. They can be these services anything from how to improve your marriage to how to shop for healthy food, how to drive a car, how to do this, that, and the other. They're just unending services that they can provide to the refugees and get federal grants. So they have 3 ways of making money off of refugees, but yet we're never told when they're out there lobbying on behalf of refugee resettlement that it's in their financial interest to have more refugees every year come into the United States.
If I thought being called a bigot because I have the same views that Leo does is something, I can imagine the kind of heat that is coming his direction. And of course, that's just the way you marginalize somebody. The reason people are sleeping today, and I really want to ask questions, but I can't help but comment here. We're sleeping because the media is so silent, and even, well, not really silent, they're promoting. And that's why the American people don't realize what's going on. We don't necessarily, as Americans, just a rank and file American, have to know all the doctrines and problems of Islam and the history that has so many problems through it. But what we do understand is what they did in 9/11, and we've forgotten those things.
Yeah.
And we've forgotten that if we don't vet these folks, that the bad guys are coming with them. And if I was a leader in ISIS, I would be doing everything possible to get the worst of the worst in the country now while the gate is still open.
Talking to Leo Hohmann, you can find his book, Stealth Invasion, Muslim Conquest Through Immigration and Resettlement Jihad, at WorldNet Daily, WND.com. Just go to their store at WND.com. We don't carry it here at this ministry, but I want to play a quick soundbite. Brigitte Gabriel kind of backing everything that Leo has said up until this point anyway.
Are you watching what's happening in Europe with immigration and refugee issues? They are experiencing a mess that is beyond repair. Americans are concerned, and rightfully so, about who we are importing into our country and the ramification of their presence in our communities. Here's a shocker. Do you know that it is the United Nations Commission on Refugees who decides which refugees come to America? Yeah, you heard it correctly. They work with the State Department, who then works with 9 federal contractors. 6 of them are religious organizations, Christians and Jews, to resettle the refugees at the cost of $1 billion, not counting extra benefits like welfare. And where is this money coming from? Your pocket. The Treasury Department. The federal contractors use subcontractors to spread the refugees throughout America. Once they bring one refugee in, the process starts all over again to bring their extended family. It's a cash cow, and everyone is jumping on the do-good wagon because of the millions of dollars they stand to make. To give you an idea, Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service is 95% funded by your tax dollars. Their revenue for 2014 was $59 million and some change. Almost $57 million came out of your pocket. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, Migration and Refugee Services is the largest private refugee resettlement agency in the U.S. In 2014, they brought in $85 million and some change. $82 million came from your pocket. We are literally paying good money to import bad problems Europe is already experiencing, such as sexual assault, terrorism, infectious diseases, and a clash of culture and values, because most of the refugees we are importing are Muslims. 6 states already in America reported cases of rape and sexual assault: Massachusetts, Idaho, Virginia, Utah, California, and North Dakota. While we see these cases as heinous attacks, they are often justified in the culture where they came from. Child marriages, child rape, child prostitution, especially the sexual abuse of little girls and women. When refugees are confronted, they say it is sanctioned in their culture and religion. Refugee cities have also become hubs for illnesses, such as highly infectious bacterial diseases like active tuberculosis that were once controlled, now mushrooming all over America. Colorado has 16 cases, Ohio 11 cases, Vermont 35, Wisconsin 117 cases. Most of them are drug resistant, which means it costs us, the taxpayers, $150,000 per case, and it takes 6 to 8 months to treat them. Florida, 11 cases, Idaho 7, Indiana 4, Kentucky 9, and North Dakota 4 cases. Refugee resettlement is not about humanitarianism, but about supplying cheap labor. Most refugees are on welfare of some sort, which makes anyone employing them eligible for the Federal Work Opportunity Tax Credit. An employer has a greater incentive to hire a refugee whose salary is subsidized by the taxpayer instead of hiring a struggling American. The food processing, meat packing, manufacturing, and the hotel industry are enjoying cheap labor at the expense of the U.S. taxpayer and cultural and social upheaval. It's companies like Chobani Yogurt, Tyson Foods, and Chipotle, just to name a few. So don't fall for the humanitarian mumbo-jumbo. Refugee resettlement is an industry driven by the importation of cheap labor and potential votes. Please cut the baloney and the expense. Now let's talk about importing terrorism. We have at least had 10 cases of refugee Islamic terror arrests or convictions right here in America. Both Boston bombers, the Tsarnaev brothers, were refugees. Bombings in Manhattan and New Jersey were committed by a refugee. A Somali refugee went on a stabbing rampage at a Minnesota mall. Another one stabbed dozens on the Ohio State campus, to name a few. If the 5 top rich Islamic countries of the world, led by Saudi Arabia, have not let refugees in because they are afraid of importing terrorism, then why are we? When are we going to stop being suicidal with our population?